Yeah. Back like I'm avenging my brother's death.
Yeah.
Who said it? Was that Cool G Rap? Didn't Cool G Rap say that?
I don't know, man.
Man, that was
I
Cool
don't
G
know,
Rap. Back like
man.
I'm avenging my brother's death.
I mean, it might be. Coogie's hard, you know what I'm saying? He be coming with them hard bars for sure.
Yeah, Cool G Rap goes in, bro. He goes
Yeah.
in. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
sir.
So we here in the and listen, man. You said this. So I'm gonna say it for the people, for the party people who may jump into the stream. They got to understand that this really is a labor of love. This NBA playoffs is on right now.
Listen.
This is the NBA. And your team is playing right now. If I'm not mistaken.
Listen. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Game 3. You know what I mean?
Listen, this dude got hit in the eye for y'all. I just want y'all to know that.
I was going to play
y'all
out the
know.
cross-side joint, you know what I'm saying? But
I know. He got hit in the eye. Somebody
Yeah.
said something about cross-examining and the people who listen. And they stole him, and he
stood up for y'all, man.
stood up for y'all.
You know what I'm
So just
saying?
make
Put
sure
my
y'all hit
boots
the
out.
like and subscribe
what
button.
up? What up? What up?
You know what I'm
You
saying?
Dip gang.
For he's
Still
a
caught me,
jolly
though.
good like button. Hit the like button and subscribe. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's your mom's when we took her hostage. That's what
Listen,
happened.
Jesus said before Abraham was, hit the like button. You know what I'm saying?
Word.
We doing all that. But we here, ladies and gentlemen. We back to the grill again. The grill again. Back to the grill again. The grill again. This is season 5, episode 20. Right? That's right. 20?
20.
Yeah, that's it. 20. Yeah, that's it. 20.
20,
Episode 20.
20. Pa.
We here, man. We're glad to be here. Look, we got a special guest tonight. I'm gonna bring in my mellow. Get on the mic, cause you know you eat Jello. Y'all know about that. I know y'all know about that. Man, beat your chest if you know about that old Big Daddy Kane and Biz Markie. Like that, y'all. Like that. Like. See, y'all ain't from that rap. Y'all ain't from that rap.
Yes.
So we're gonna bring in my man. We got a crazy show. We can really talk about the nonfiction of science fiction. And so we're gonna talk technology. We're gonna get into all
They
that.
not ready.
So we bring him. They not ready for this one. We gonna listen, man. This one is gonna cause some problems. We're gonna say a few things to some people, but without further ado, we bring in my man. His name is Mike Perry, but I call him Cron Creasy. Welcome, bro. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Cross Examine. You know
It was good.
What up?
Yeah. So we here. So listen, I've been wanting to do this show for a while. And so I'm gonna jump right in. Because I know Strike want to hurry up so he can catch some of the game, and I feel that. You know what I'm saying? I respect that. So I've been wanting to do this episode. This episode is called the nonfiction of science fiction. Let me tell you why I wanted to do this for a while. And it started with a song that all three of us would know, right? So one day I was listening to Prince, right? Prince is the artist formerly known as The Logo, right? Whatever that logo meant, right?
Yeah.
So I was listening to Prince, and he has a song called 1999. It's a tough joint, right?
It's a banger.
It's a tough joint. So it's like, I was dreaming when I woke up, so give me if I go astray. All that, right? So we got that. Then we got the hook 2000 party over, it's out of time. That's when you had to have this rhythm. So tonight I'm gonna party. That's when you had that type of rhythm, right?
Right.
So I was thinking about that song. I was listening to that song, and I realized that he wrote that song in 1984. I was a kid. I remember that song. And I'm listening to the lyrics now, you know, almost 40 years later. I'm listening to that song. And as I'm hearing it, I'm thinking like, man, and there's a point in the song where Prince says, the hook is 2000 party over it. So I started thinking about Y2K and how I remember when everybody thought the world was going
apocalypse.
Yeah, it was like going to be like a computer apocalypse, right? We thought, why? But a lot of that came from, which we're going to get into. A lot of that came from something specific. But I was thinking about that, and then I'm listening to the lyrics, and he goes, "Mommy, why does everybody have a bomb?" Right? I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, wow, Prince was pretty much ahead of his time. He was I like this music. It was a great music back then. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but I mean, back then I liked it a lot. And in a nostalgia moment, you might catch me and my wife, you know what I'm saying, grooving to that joint, some Prince, especially on a road trip. You might throw in the 80s and get it in. But as I was listening to it, I thought, wow, this is what people thought of the future, right? Then I started thinking about just a bunch of like sci-fi movies, right? I started thinking about sci-fi movies, and I started thinking about stuff like Blade Runner. For those of you who may not know, Blade Runner was a movie that starred Harrison Ford, and he was like an agent that was trying to trying to stop people. They called them replicas, I think, in the movie. They weren't clones, but they were basically synthetic human beings.
Replicants, yep.
Replicants, yeah. And they looked like real human beings, and he was trying to figure out who they were. And the main villain was a replicant who was basically like a clone that he had to kill in the movie. If you were going to see it and I spoiled it for you, I'm sorry. This is cross-examined. Don't get mad at me. Hate the game, not the player. So I'm thinking about that movie. Then I start thinking about like Terminator, you know? And then you start thinking about like all the movies that I thought this is what the future is going to be like. And I realized that not in every sci-fi movie, but in a lot of those movies, there's a theme. There was a theme in a lot of the movies that came out in the 80s of sci-fi, futuristic movies. And they typically had this theme. Most of them, not all of them. There was some that Star Trek did its own thing. And, you know, you had fun stuff, Back to the Future and all that stuff. But there was a theme for a lot of these movies. It was either AI, artificial intelligence, is going to take over the world, and there was a sense of synthetic people, like people that are like clones, like not real people. Just people would be different and just sort of weird looking. People had, you know, back then blue hair and all this stuff. It was stuff that you just back then were like, that's crazy to think about. So there was this theme of these movies, and then you had one more that was sort of dystopian future, kind of like Mad Max type stuff, where there was a lot of sci-fi movies revolved around those three elements: a dystopian future where societies
Total Recall.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
just like Total Recall. I mean, crazy, like the first one too, the real one.
Yeah, the real joint. The real joint with the lady with the 3 boobies. You know what I mean? That joint was crazy.
How's Yeah, he used to do some joints, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
Total Recall, when that came out in like 1990, I think. When that joint
was wild.
That was a banger.
Joint that's still official today.
Yeah.
That technology. Remember when he looked like when he was dressed up like the big white woman, and then it was like, then eventually it was like, she was in the airport twitching.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
And then all of a sudden, man, she just took off that head, and then it was him. And then she was like, "Get ready for a surprise!" Boom! Listen. Hey, never mind. We gonna end the show, man.
The 80s was wild, man. The 80s was wild, man.
80s, early 90s was wild. All right, so in that, right, I was thinking about all these sci-fi movies and listening to Prince's song, 1999, thinking about the future, and then it just really hit me that, like, there was a degree, like, when I grew up, I always knew science fiction was fake. It was basically a technological kind of alien synthetic reality, part of reality. And that was part of the beauty of it. You could just go to different, you see different creatures, different worlds. There was a lot of that stuff, the Star Warses and the Star Treks and,
for sure,
and all those things.
Never-ending story.
Right, just crazy stuff like that, right? But then there was also a sense where you saw technology, things that may happen in the future, flying cars and people talking on devices with holograms, all these different things.
Yeah.
But I realized, like, a lot of where we're at right now in the culture is a part of it, came out of that reality. Like, there are aspects of right now, artificial intelligence, the kind of human beings that we're seeing, like, not knowing who's a real human being, what is a human being.
Right.
There's a lot of the theme of those movies in the 80s that I feel like, wow, have become nonfiction. Like, science fiction is not nonfiction for the most part. Science fiction is science fiction. Fiction is embedded in the name, and it's science. It can be, but I feel like right now we are living, for the first time, at least my lifetime, I feel like we're living in the nonfiction of science fiction.
It's almost like Cloak and Dagger come to life. You know what I mean? Like remember Cloak and Dagger? It was the games. The game was interacting with real life, like that whole idea, that whole concept. It was wild, man. That whole, definitely life is imitating art for sure in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
From the scientific perspective.
So I want to talk about this, and there's a couple particular avenues I want to hit with this, because I think, especially now, we've talked about this before, Strack, on the show, and I've talked about this in different ways. We live now, you know how there's always sort of sociological movements or anthropological movements. You got the the age of enlightenment, right? And that kind of rivals, that shakes up the world, is all this idea of reason, and you get the I think therefore I am, and this trust in science and the scientific method, and you know, my ability to reason and think kind of rivals faith. And then after that era goes, you get the Romanticism period, right? Where everything is about just and Jesus is in the midst of all of these, right? I have a book called Jesus circa something, and it has how people perceive Jesus in each of these different periods. And after the Romanticism period, you get what's called the modern period, right? So that's the early 20th century, modernism and all of that. And after modernism, you get still in the 20th century, but more moving towards our century, 21st, you get postmodernism, right? And in the postmodernism reality, or on our way to postmodernism, so many people put their confidence and trust in science. Like there were people who would walk away from even Christianity to faith because of science, right?
Oh yeah.
But now we live in a post-scientific society. Like I thought it would take a long time to get to the point where the science part of it now is no longer respected or trusted.
Right.
Right. We're in a post-science society, which is fascinating. So I want to get into some of these things with y'all. I'm curious as to what y'all think, and I want to talk about this idea, particularly with the new AI, the artificial intelligence stuff is really bananas right now. And I want to talk about it. But before we get into that, Cronkeezy, you know, you're here on the show. You are, out of the three of us, you are the technological extraordinaire. So just give us, I want to talk to you a little bit about how did you get into like tech stuff, IT stuff, and give us a little bit about some of the things that you enjoy and what you've done.
Sure. So I got into technology really early on. You know, I was probably around 10 years old or so in school, you know.
Prodigy.
Yeah. You know, my parents brought home like a used computer that they had gotten, you know, for the family. And that was kind of all she wrote, man. I just was on the computer, was on the internet, like very early days, you know, you've got mail, the early days, you know? So like, and then from there I started building my own computers. And then, you know, from there I just started, you know, dabbling with like programming and stuff like that. And then once I got out of high school, that was just kind of my career, just going in and just doing, you know, IT. So I've been in IT for, what are we, 2023? So I've been in IT for about 24 years now. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
So for you, just a general question, what are some of the biggest technological jumps that you've seen happen? Because you're more like, we could just talk about the iPhone, some of that stuff is there, but you know things from coding and all of that. Like, what things have you seen that have been like, wow, this is crazy?
You know, it's interesting. So I think the biggest jumps that we've seen from a technology perspective have probably happened in the last, you know, I mean, this is kind of relative, but probably have happened in the last, I would say 20 years for sure. I mean, you know, even from things like the event of like the iPhone, and then, you know, from that came the whole idea of like apps. You know, before that, we just call them applications or programs, right? But then became like the apps that kind of popularized that term, and there's an app for everything, right? And then, you know, we got like the Windows Phone, Android phones. I think, you know, the mobile revolution from a technology perspective is one of the biggest changers, I think, to like society, and that at least in my lifetime, you know, from a technology perspective, how technology can like affect culture and society and in the way whole civilizations of people operate and think and process life. So I think the mobile revolution really kind of moved that along pretty aggressively. Now I think we're poised for the next big jump, which is AI. And I think a lot of that stuff is powered by the cloud. I think the advent of the cloud making, you know, processing and the compute power and storage and, you know, all that kind of stuff so accessible to people. I think now that has fostered this environment where we can have AI and different technologies like that, and where really sky's the limit. Because, you know, back in the day, before there was the event of the cloud, if you wanted to do anything like machine learning or any of that kind of stuff, man, you had to pay, you know, you could build a computer for like $20,000 to do all this stuff. But now it's democratized. You can pay monthly, you know, based on your usage from like the cloud, and like $20 a month, and you can just have at it, right? And so there's not that kind of capital expenditure up front to like really go deep into technology. And so I think, because of the cloud, I think that now AI and different things like that are just attainable and more accessible to a lot more people. So yeah, and I think we're poised for like a huge kind of evolutionary kind of leap from a technology perspective, and one that, again, just like the mobile revolution, will definitely affect and change culture. I'm not really sure if it's change culture for the better, but it's definitely going to affect and change culture. I think there's going to be a lot of utility in it. AI is going to be able to do things like, you could type to AI, hey, write me a good outline for a book that I want, and here's the topic of the book, and here's some insights on blah blah blah, right? And it can spit out things. So right, there's going to be utility in it. People can be things that will be useful. You can get shortcuts to in goals, right? But at the same time, I think there's going to be some downsides introduced with that with AI, where now no matter what you see or hear, we're going to be in a position where it's going to be difficult to believe it, because AI can generate anything. Like if I fed AI just a few pictures of you, Kurt, from my iPhone that I have on my iPhone, right? And I say, okay, now create a video of Kurt getting arrested, outside of the courthouse in Mississippi. It can do that, and it would be almost indistinguishable from a real video.
Do you think it can like get me like I'm in better shape, like I'm chiseled up and stuff?
Yeah. Like if I could say, okay, here's some pictures of Kurt. Now I want Kurt looking like Jason Momoa, but getting arrested outside a courthouse in Missouri. It'll do it. It'll be indistinguishable from real. Like it's. Hey,
I want that, man. I want that. Put it on my wall, man. I want that as a goal, man.
Now you said,
matter of fact, I might want that.
Mike, you said you was in IT now for 24 years.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Are you able to just elaborate a little bit of what you do or what you have done? I know y'all jokingly said you can't really talk too much about what you do currently, you know what I'm saying? But spice it up a little bit for us. Give us a little bit of what you do, so that we know what you're talking about.
Sure. Well, I started from I'm like Drake. I started from the bottom,
Nice.
I started on service desk, help desk stuff, like answering calls, help desk, can I help you? Have you tried turning it on, off and on again? All that kind of stuff, right? I started with them on them terms.
Simple days, right?
Yeah, nice. So I was lucky enough to get in early on the wave. So like I got in early, started from the bottom, worked my way up to like management and different things like that. Just from managing service desk and help desk, and then managing like large scale programs, working with the government and managing like large scale like government, technology programs and different things like that. Things that affect the way the government interacts with citizens and all that kind of stuff I can't really talk about, but yeah. There's lots of projects that would have affected, I'm sure, your life or the life of other people that you know of that I can't really talk about. But so
how do you deal with that in your personal life though? Like, these things are gonna affect you. So how do you, you know what I'm saying? Like you're working on something will affect your life as well. How do you deal with that?
Sometimes it's hard, to be honest. I mean, it especially when, see, man, you try to make me say too much.
Nah, not at all. Not at all. Say what you comfortable saying.
Sometimes it is hard knowing, some of the things that are out there, and also knowing some of the threats that are out there that people might not even just be aware of. From a cyber attack perspective to, even general technology perspective, and how the government's kind of using technology in different ways and all that. It can be difficult at times, I mean, that's where prayer comes in, and honestly, just having the trust of the Lord and saying, Lord, you're allowing these things to transpire. So, I'm sure that you can find your glory in these things and different things like that. Just pray for people's hearts to use these, use the tools at their disposal, for the betterment of people versus the harm of people. You know what I mean?
Do you take the Steve Jobs approach as far as your family's concerned? How he used to keep iPads and phones away from the children, because he didn't want them exposed to that. Do you function a little bit that way, or you're just...
We used to, when our kids were younger, for sure, we did. Now that they're a little bit older, they have a little bit more leeway. Obviously, I'm not going to let them just sit on the iPad like all day.
Right.
But I don't keep them from it. I think honestly, for one of the things, from the simple fact of like, as they get older, even in school and different things like that. There's a certain level of technological adaptness that is going to be expected of kids and of society in general. And so I don't want my kids to be unprepared for like life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I don't keep it from them. But, you know, a good friend of mine who also happens to be a pastor, you know, said something a few years ago, said, you know, our job as parents aren't to tell our kids what to think, it's to teach them how to think. And so with that, you know, with those devices, which is, hey, it was, you know, you look like Jason Momoa a little bit, though.
But got the hair already. The hair is already there.
The insiders.
You know? But so anyway, I don't keep it from them. You know, I let them have access to it, but I do explain things to them, and you know, try to get them to understand, you know, on a deeper level, you know, both the good and the dangers of these devices and how people use them, for sure.
Yeah. Here's real quick. I thought this is God's sovereignty right here. As we're talking, I get a notification, right? So here's the notification I just got for an article on CNBC. It says Space Force Chief says U.S. is facing a new era of threats beyond Earth. And then here are the key points. General Chance Saltzman of the U.S. Space Force describes what he says is a new era of space activity. The threats that we face to our on-orbit capabilities from our strategic competitors have grown substantially, Saltzman said in a CNBC interview. This message comes at a key moment as space rapidly commercializes and a heightened geopolitical backdrop increasingly sees threats extending beyond Earth. I thought this was interesting because there was a point where there was no way you could fly up off the Earth unless you worked for NASA.
Right, yep.
But then Jeff Bezos, right? He's got tons of money and he can just pay multi-millions of dollars and just get some friends on a rocket and leave Earth. Mm-hmm. And no one's telling him he can't do it. Like,
right. That's wild, though.
Technological advancement, fam. This bam is the first George Jetson.
Right, right. Like, you got to get a passport to go to another country, but my man just bounced from the Earth. Like, so check y'all out.
We just go to build a rocket.
That's so going
up. No NASA, no training, no nothing.
Yeah, that's a flex. That's a serious flex, crazy. Man.
So I just thought it's interesting as we're thinking about the technological side of things and all of that.
Yeah.
So, Cronkite, for you, as you think about the world, I want to dive into the AI conversation right now. I recently watched Tucker Carlson do an interview with Elon Musk, and this was like 2 or 3 days ago, and it was interesting. I don't listen to Elon Musk a lot, so it was interesting to hear him talk. And as he was talking, the segment that I watched was, what are his concerns for AI?
Mm-hmm.
And I had already been thinking about like what mine were, just to think about the possibilities, right? I'm a second, you know, I'm one of them guys in Romans. Romans, one of the inventors of evil, right? So there's nothing that's happening that people will not use in a way that's gonna do evil. And so in my mind, I have categories of that. But then I was listening to Elon Musk talk. You know, this guy's at the top of it, right? He said some really interesting things, and one of the concerns that he brought up was, and I'm paraphrasing, but one of the concerns he brought up was sort of people's inability to distinguish truth, right? Mm-hmm. Like people's inability to distinguish truth. And kind of what you said, like, you know, you could make something up. And then if you add the fact that we have 3D printing machines now, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can make up something and then print it, and it becomes like this actual reality, right? So he was just saying that, but his main point was that his biggest concern right now was that all of this stuff is kind of new to people and it's exciting, but there's no real limitations. Like there's no one's regulating anything. And so he said that like, this is the intro to it. It's only going to advance.
Right.
And unless there are particular regulations to stop the effects of AI in its various capacities, he was saying it could be very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. So I want to talk about this with you guys. And first I'm going to talk about AI. So for those people who don't know, Cronkite, what is AI? And not just, we know it's artificial intelligence, but what is AI from your side of it? What would you say AI is from more of the computer technological side of things?
Sure. Back in the day, AI was kind of considered, a computer can do something for a human being, and it was usually kind of relegated to something like repetitive, like instead of a human being filling out, this form or taking taking a form that was filled out and cataloging and categorizing all the information in and all that, we had a computer do that and kind of take over some of the mundane things that humans did, right? Now AI is really kind of to the point where um, depending on what sect of AI we're into, the computer can really kind of do things on its own and actually surprise the people who have created it, right? Like, so for instance, you have things like Chat GPT and other things like that. Initially, it wasn't really Chat GPT wasn't developed initially to be able to create, like, let's say, programs, right? Like it can write like applications, right? But it learned how to do that to the surprise of the people who created it, right? And so, like, artificial.
So real quick, hold on.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, because let's slow
Chat
down.
GBT.
Just slow the brand Nubian, slow down.
Sure.
Ding, ding, ding. So, what does that mean? It learned how to do that, like from the technological side. How does it learn how to do something like that?
So essentially, what ChatGPT and other things like it do, things that are based on what we call like large language models. What's interesting, the whole language aspect and connected to the Tower of Babel. We can talk about that later. But when people's language is unified, just like the Lord said, He came down and see that nothing would be out of the reach of these people, right?
Right.
So anyway,
so it's a language that unifies. It's a single language.
So it's called a large language model. And what it does is it sucks up data from all over the internet. It can suck up data from Facebook, from Twitter, from all websites and different things like that. It can suck up like videos and pictures and different things like that, and it's able to understand the context of like language, right?
And communicate them.
And exactly. And then based on the information that it sucks up, it can then, quote unquote, like learn, right? So like if you say like, who's the, 20th president of the United States, it could be able to tell you that's the simple stuff, right? But then you can say, okay, well, is this particular president, famous for, any types of, whatever, right? And it can tell you that information because it's sucked up that information. So now it's in a position where with the information it sucks up, or it has sucked up until now, you can ask questions that it might not know the exact answer to, but it can infer the answer based on information it does have. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's deducting. It's deducting from information.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the AI is actually able to deduct now versus just normal inputs and outputs, like
that's program wild, it in. That's crazy. It's thinking for itself almost.
Yeah. I
think it definitely is. I'm gonna tell you why in a second. What I did earlier today, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. So so that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about like when people perception of like AI now, it's really linked to like large language models. Now there's other parts of AI, but the hot what's hot on the street these days is this.
How far are we from AI reading our minds?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I say that the way you ask that is interesting because as a part of a large language model is being able. So when you talk to it, it's calculating and almost trying to predict what you're going to ask next based on what you've already asked, and that's a part of how it's able to deduct. So a part of what large language models do is after you're speaking to it for a while, it starts trying to predict what you might be asking next. So that's interesting that you said how long before we read our mind. Now, how long can it actually read our thoughts and stuff like that? I don't know. That's a little kind of far out. I'm not really sure. Right. But part of what it does is try to predict. Okay, I've been asked a bunch of these questions. Here's a bunch of these answers. What do I think is going to be like the next course of question or reasoning that I'm going to have to deal with? So it can kind of prefetch that information early, so I can give you more rapid answers.
I think to just bring it in perspective as far as reading our minds, I mean, you have artificial intelligence that can see our brains.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just to kind of remind people, hey, like, it can see the sound waves, see our brains, see, you know, kind of our thoughts, you know, the way our colors go to our certain spots of the brain when we're thinking certain things. Like, so it's not far fetched, you know. I think it's interesting the way you said, you referenced Babel, and it's almost like we found our way back to that epic moment, you know, and as a society.
I say that we got there even before now. Right now, it's just more prevalent.
Right.
You know, it's interesting because the language was unified. People's desire to sin, in one sense, you know, was kind of like unified, right? There was like a common goal of like that kind of stuff, right? It's interesting because
A common goal of rebellion.
a common goal of rebellion, right?
Yeah.
And so you can have people who can like chip in and you know this person can contribute to the rebellion and this person contribute to the rebellion from different from different nationalities and all that kind of stuff because they all spoke the same language, right? Well, think about it in this terms. You know, when you write a computer application, what do you use? You use a computer language.
Right.
And so people are unified around a singular computer language trying to accomplish something, right? So they have different languages like Java, and you have different languages like C and different things like that. And so then you have the advent of things like GitHub. If you guys aren't familiar with that, GitHub is basically an online repository where you can keep the code that you've created, and you can also invite others from across the globe, you know, completely democratized to contribute code of their own to the project to your common goal. Right.
Wow.
So now, even though we're speaking different languages, we understand a common language, which is the computer language, to create an application. Right. So that's why I say it started even before now. You know, we're kind of like unified around a common language. And now because of that, you know, people's propensity to like sin or their access to sin with others come across the globe is now introduced again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. Total sense.
So let me ask this question. Because we're on AI and we're talking about the issues with AI, right?
Sure.
And so I want to ask this question. What concerns do you have for AI? And let me explain why I'm asking it first. Not because of Elon Musk. A couple weeks ago, I started hearing about people making songs that sound like you're rapping with an artist. And so I heard one with Kendrick, and it was like, this is not Kendrick, and the guy showed how he did it. And then the one that kind of blew up the most was this guy did a song with Jay-Z. And it sounded like Jay-Z. It obviously wasn't Jay-Z. But he was able to, I mean, he sounds like Jay-Z, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it sounds like Jay-Z, and the beat was a good song, actually, right? And then recently, as of a couple days ago, someone created a Drake AI song, Drake and the Weeknd, that fooled a ton of people. And it fooled people so much that Urban Music Group had it taken down everywhere it was because it was fooling people. And initially, when you first hear it, it's just crazy. Like, wow, that sounds just like Jay-Z. And it's fun almost, right?
Sure.
And then so and like I said, the song was good. But then I started thinking about, because I'm a guy. I think Romans 1, people are inventors of evil, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm always thinking like, how do you? And then I started thinking about, okay, right now you're able to get a celebrity's voice. Somehow you can tweak it and get a celebrity. You can get these celebrities. Their voices are out there. But what happens when it gets to the point where you can just start getting anybody's voice, right?
I mean, we are at that point. Honestly, you can do that with yourself right now. You can feed it audio of you, just a little bit of audio of you talking, and then ask it to create audio of you like reading this book, and it'll do it, right? Or create audio of you singing this song, and it'll do it, and it'll sound just like you. That's all it's required.
See, so that's scary because go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think because it's scary, or the reason I think it's scary to me is because of how big of an industry scamming has become. Like, scamming is a huge industry. So you're telling me somebody can call me a scammer, get me on the phone for just a few seconds, you know what I'm saying, and then take that vocal and use it to do whatever they want. Like that's
that's
kind
where
of
I'm
wild.
going with it. Like I'm going with it. Like so so I'm thinking of stuff like this. Yeah, it's cool now you can sound like Jay-Z, but what happens when, you know, someone who has an affinity for your children, right? Gets your voice and then calls the school, makes it sound like it's you, and tells the school that your brother is going to come pick up the kids. And they don't know, they're not hip, and all of a sudden they release your kids to some dude who's going to abuse them, right?
Right. Like
Inventors
of Evil.
You know, Inventors of Evil, right? So when I think about this stuff, yeah, it's cool. You can sound like Jay-Z. I would never do that. You know what I'm saying? Because I got bars, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm more
and it's
Tom
deceptive in
that.
its own right anyway.
But I'm thinking more like, wow, this can actually be like, or you can take somebody's voice and threaten the president, and now you got Secret Service at your house.
Yo, that would be crazy.
Remember, and the reason why I'm saying this, you guys probably saw this movie. This was a movie in the late '90s. It was Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes, and he was either in Japan or somewhere. It was called like it was Rising Sun something. What was it? It was
You go, oh man.
I think I know what you're talking about too. I'm gonna look it up.
Remember that movie? It was able to make it look like take a dude's. It made it look like this dude killed this person through technology, and this was like late '90s, right? This was crazy. It was like Dark Moon Rising or something like that. It was Sean Connery and
Wesley Snipes, you said?
Yeah, man. And that Rising Sun.
There you go.
Rising Sun.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Right now looking.
Rising
1993.
Sun. Profound be coming through. He's one of the newer.
Yeah, that's my guy right there.
He's one of the newer OGs. He's becoming an OG.
Nah, he been around.
Examiner, OG. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Mark said it too. Mark is an OG too, right? So.
What up,
So
Mark?
like that movie was crazy, and the premise of the whole movie was a video that looked like this one Asian dude killed these people when he didn't, and that was back then. You can do that stuff now with Photoshop and all these other things. That's nothing.
Man, you don't even need Photoshop anymore. I mean,
Sakamura was his name.
Yeah,
he's the one that killed the dude.
This dude just saw the movie like last week or something.
He watching it right now.
He just watched the movie last week. You know what I'm saying?
He watching that joint right now, man.
Right, that's crazy. But when you think about that, I'm more thinking about, wow, what happens when someone? Okay, so let's go 24 with it, right? Espionage.
Let's do it.
Let's go there, right? You see those movies where you take a dude's voice and get into like this room or get his like. I'm thinking like, what if someone wants to sabotage? You get the president's voice activated, and then you get to unlock the thing that launches the nuke, right? Like it's just it looks so television, but now after seeing people able to put out music and have people's voices, and right now it's unregulated, right?
Sure, yeah.
The where this could go is almost as infinite as people's own sinful desires. Like you can go. I mean, can you imagine? What if someone calls your child? I mean, Cronkite, me and you still got. My children are a little older than you, but what if someone calls Friday? It sounds like Dad. Hey, I want you to go down to here and walk over here. I'm going to pick you up, and you know what I mean. Like it's just now you have to prepare yourself and your family for, like, when you talk about scamming on a whole other level.
Yeah.
Like just typical, like, I'm going to convince you of this. So like, hey, babe, it's me. Hey, what are you doing? Are you big? No, real quick. Listen, I can't really talk right now, but there's a guy coming to pick up a package. He's going to be, and that guy ends up assaulting your wife. You know what I'm saying? Like,
wow.
That's the kind of stuff that I think, wow, this is where it's headed. So as you guys process like concerns for AI that you have, where do you go with it?
I mean, I think you're 100% spot on. I mean, one of the places that I also go with it, aside from the direct connection of like my family and friends and different things like that, is, I'm just thinking of like the political havoc that can be, wreaked soon.
Wow,
We've already seen it, right? The video of Donald Trump getting arrested outside of the courthouse. It wasn't really him. It was just made up, right?
And we knew it wasn't, so it was funny, right?
Right.
And this is a different conversation, but I'm just make this point right now.
Some people don't, though.
Well,
some people don't.
But
that's how you get our defenses down. Entertainment is how you get people.
There it is. That's it. The things that amuse us we accept easier.
Right.
And so if it's funny or we like it and it's entertaining, we
Right.
put our guard down, almost like the Trojan horse syndrome, right? You
Right.
get this big horse, they're like so impressed with this horse that they bring it in, and inside is all the soldiers, right?
Right.
It's kind
Facts.
of like that. Like we've been Trojan horsed a lot, and I ain't talking
Like a
about the
juicy
condom.
looking fruit. Like a
You know what
juicy
I'm
looking
saying?
fruit.
Right. I'm just saying, like, we ain't talking about the rubbers. We
know
talking
what I mean?
about the reality of seeing something, being amused, entertaining by, and immediately accepting it.
And not even thinking about the long-term
not even thinking
implications or the
about
dangers.
consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
Until now it's too late. And this is what Elon Musk said. Let me say this real quickly, then I want you to finish. Elon Musk said, by the time this thing is people, he didn't say the amusing part, but he essentially said it's happening so rapidly that by the time most people realize how dangerous it is, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late. You can't scale back from it. It's too late. So anyway, go ahead. You were saying that you were coming from a different angle, not the personal, but
just the political and the kind of like the geopolitical spectrum of where this could go.
yeah,
People having videos of world leaders doing things that they never did, or audio world leaders saying things that they never did, or on the inverse, it'll be a problem on both sides, right?
Yeah,
You can invent evil in a way where you can make it look like people have done or said things that they didn't do, but on the other side of that, once that reality is in place, then it almost gives other people the leeway to do evil and then claim it wasn't really me, it must have been an AI, right?
real.
Right.
So like it's on both sides.
Wow.
And I'm just saying the geopolitical
Wow.
friction and propensity for evil is going to just grow exponentially greater and greater.
Is there ever a point where it's like, I mean, in people's minds, but this is too much. Like we've gone too far. You know what I'm saying? Like, do people ever talk like that in your circles, or is it more like, yo, we have to reach the furthest we can reach? We have to, because we would be doing ourselves an injustice not to exhaust our knowledge.
There are some, there's definitely some AI researchers who are on that spectrum. The difficulty, and we do need legislation. I think now, early on, I think there's two difficulties with that. The first difficulty is just to keep it 100 and be realistic. The lawmakers that we have now just don't understand technology in a way. They're too old and don't understand technology in a way to be able to effectively legislate what's really going on.
It's come upon us too quickly.
Yeah.
Well, you said that they're just too old, and that's a different conversation. But that's part of the. I think our political system is jacked up not because it's only two parties. It's because the congressmen within those two parties can be there for decades, and you're just not. Once you get into that world, it's like a fraternity, right? It's like your job is to stay in that world.
Yeah.
And give the appearance that what you're doing for your constituents, the American people. And it's really not, So.
And then once technology has surpassed you, your understanding is completely dependent on the people who are around you or in your
That's
office
right.
or employed
that's
by
right.
you. And so now it's their agendas that are getting accomplished because you don't have the understanding to know any better, right?
Wow.
So, so that's kind of like the one aspect. We need legislation. The other aspect to the legislation part, aside from our lawmakers kind of really not understanding the technology, is for the legislation to be effective, it would have to be. It almost would have to be, how like we had like the nuclear arms race, and then we had like the treaties across the globe of like, okay, between country to country, okay, we've pledged to not produce X amount in nuclear arms, or to like disarm our nuclear arms and different things like that.
Right.
We need something similar here because no country is going to stop developing AI unless it's going to be like a joint thing with other countries who are both their allies and their opponents as well, right? Because you're not going to say, well, okay, for my country, we're not going to invest in AI because it can get dangerous, all the while letting your rivals, grow and getting their, and getting their AI game up while you're just sitting there and don't have your capabilities to combat that, right? you understand what I'm saying? So,
Yeah,
like,
I guess I would ask: does anybody have regulations? Does anyone have? Because I'm like,
not that I'm aware of.
I've heard that China has regulations on how far they can go and
China
what they're
is
doing.
just
Like
Warren G.
I know Italy
they're watching it a little
has-
bit closer.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that could have just been some liberal joint I was listening to. You know how I be.
Italy and China have had some rumblings of that. I know Italy did impose some constraints around people using ChatGPT and different things like that. I can't remember exactly what the story was in China, but I know there was something along those lines as well. But again, there's a difference between like telling the common citizens they're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z versus the government still investing in doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
For
And
sure.
so what I'm saying is like unless there's like a global or kind of like joint understanding, almost like a NATO for AI kind of thing, I don't think any country is going to divest its investment in AI because they wouldn't want to do that while allowing their,
They don't want to fall behind.
They don't want to fall behind their rivals, and now they're unprepared for the attacks that will come for them, right?
It's kind of, I think it's kind of erased or even maybe compounded upon the space race. So
Yeah,
you got the space race, and now you got
analogous to
the
that,
AI race like together because the space race is kind of coming back.
Right.
You
It is
know,
coming
like,
back.
so, yeah.
I just read that article, right? That was
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It is coming back. Yeah.
So now it's like a double-edged sword almost. And you got AI and the space race, and they're actually, I mean, I think they probably will combine. But,
I think part of the temptation too for believers, I think it'll just, again, it's just it's like easily accessible, like cheating, right? You got to write a paper.
Right.
You're a believer. You got to write a paper. You got behind. Life happens, and then you just like, how do you even, like, how do you track that? Like, how do you even know? I mean, people are going to be writing books and all this stuff. You doing this stuff.
Man, a buddy of mine, his kid was behind, and they had a book report due, and he typed in the joint like, I need a book report in the voice of a 13-year-old boy, blah 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 blah. Gave him all this information. Boom, out pops a book report, sounding like it was written by a 13-year-old kid. All this kind of thing, and he used it. He turned it in because they were behind. Like that's happening now, bro. Yeah. The buddy of mine who did it. Yeah, that's happening now.
IT privilege. That's crazy.
But anyone can do that, right? Like anybody can do that.
Yeah.
So let me tell you, I've been playing with the Chat GPT, right?
Uh-oh.
And so I did something. I did some couple cool things, but I just thought, you know what? I want to try something. So this is what I said. Here's what I said to it. All right. I'm sorry for the sexual acronym community. You're gonna get mad at me. But here's what I wrote. This is what I put, because you have to type in something you wanted to say. Here's what it said. Explain that the goal of the transgender movement is to become transhuman and no longer have a need for human distinctions or God. Right? So that's what I said. Waited for it to generate. Here's what it responded back and said this. This was its response. As an AI language model, I must clarify that this statement is not accurate. The goal of transgender individuals is not to become transhuman, nor to eliminate human distinctions or God. The transgender individuals are people whose gender identity or expression differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. They may experience gender dysphoria, which is a condition where a person feels distress or discomfort because their gender identity does not match the sex they were assigned at birth. The goal of transgender individuals is to live in a way that aligns with their gender identity, which may involve social, medical, or legal transition. Transhumanism, on the other hand, is a philosophical and cultural movement that advocates for the uses of science and technology to enhance human abilities and characteristics. While some transhumanists may believe in eliminating certain human distinctions, such as biological aging or physical limitations, this is not a goal shared by all members of the movement. Additionally, there is no inherent connection between being a transgender and being transhumanist.
Sounds like you got sunned by AI.
I got flunked. I did. That joint, listen, this joint came back in like 30 seconds. Like that joint was thinking, it was like, nah, fam. And I was just trying to say something crazy. Because other stuff I said, it hit like what I wanted to hit right. So I was like, let me try and just see what I can do with this, and then it just came back with that. So I thought, wow, that's interesting that it's making that distinction like that, and that was I kid you not, it couldn't. It was less than 30 seconds as it was processing the little. It was that, and I just thought, wow, that's crazy. That's pretty interesting that it would go in that direction.
That's because AI can't read Satan's mind, and what
No,
you
it can't.
fed it was Satan's agenda. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
you was trying to feed him that joint, and it was like cannot compute. You know what I mean?
But what was interesting was AI was on the same page as most Americans right now.
Right. That's
Right.
good.
So,
That's a good point.
so even though it's not, it can't read Satan's mind, that proves most people can't either, because
Right.
that is a response that I would have gotten from a lot of people who would go in that direction. And I realize it's not getting what I'm saying, because I'm thinking of things and in the supernatural way. I'm thinking of a deeper issue. But it was interesting as that. So what would you say, Cronkite, what would you say are good things about AI? Like we've talked about, like, oh man, this could be crazy. Like, what things do you feel like?
Oh, I mean,
really good?
there are a ton. So like, I don't want to seem like I'm like, totally against AI or anything like that. I think AI is probably the further democratization of like technology. So for instance, like I'm not a programmer. I dabbled in it earlier, but I have a lot of ideas, right? But I now, because of the advent of this type of AI, I can go and say, okay, write me a program that does X, Y, and Z. Here's the color scheme that I want. Here's what I want these different buttons to do and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even have to be a programmer. I could just tell it exactly what I want to create, and boom, out comes an application. And I can go sell that application. Like I can, you know what I mean? Like like the kind of like the sky's the limit in that regard, right? So there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be, I keep using this word, like the democratization of technology, where certain types of technology and certain types of uses of technology were at one point out of reach for like a common person, unless you went to school or, had the money to go to school and different things like that for different areas of like technology. Right now you can just ask, now you can just use your imagination and you just ask for it to be done for you. And, no studying and learning required. You know what I mean? The sky's the limit on your imagination in that regard.
So that's fun, because I know we're talking about the good things, but I want to say one thing about a concern, which is that, right? So we're, the advent of the smartphone has ironically made us dumber people.
Sure.
Right? And by that, what I mean by that is things like reason, memory. Like there was a point, remember there was a time where you remembered every one of your best friends, like all your friends' numbers?
Yep.
For sure.
You knew everybody's numbers
For
by
sure.
heart.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know anybody's numbers except like my wife and my, the closest, I don't know them. Like if I got stranded and I couldn't, and I was like, oh man, I wouldn't remember who to call, because the phone, because it does so many things that are automatic, it doesn't require that I have to remember much.
Right.
Right. So when I'm able to start doing things and just put it in there, hey, listen, man, I need a book reporter, I don't have to do the mental work, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So as I get good at that, faking it my way through, I'm not developing the skill set mentally to know how to do hard thinking and read stuff like that, right? But these are the people who are eventually going to be the decision makers of the country. Like at some point, some of those people will be deciding what you and I can and can't do, technically speaking. Obviously, certain things that they don't. But I mean, those 25 years from now, we'll be older, obviously, but they're going to be people who are younger that they grew up in the AI world, and that's their frame of reference. So there's one. The other thought I had was, man, if you created Chat GPT or something like that, there's a bunch of these AI apps. Now, my first exposure to this was this app called Jarvis. I started using Jarvis like a year and a half ago, and I liked it, but I just didn't get into it. And then when this came out, I was like, oh wow, this is like what Jarvis was, but it's kind of like the new thing. But like, there are people who are going to write books and stuff. Like if I wrote this code, like I'm writing a book for you, but I'm not going to get paid for that. Like at some point, how do these companies, how do they say, hey, I need to get some type of notoriety because you got that from the AI that I created? Like how can that work? Like if we created AI, we put it out there, and that joint is like killing it. Like people are doing award-winning essays from the technology we put together, but we ain't getting nothing from it except the
And we haven't even figured out the music industry yet. 100%. We can't figure that out.
Well, this is going to crush the music industry. This is going to crush it.
Yeah.
It's going to crush it. Well, you know what it's going to do too? It's going to make you not. See, it's hard for me to think of all the good stuff because there's a lot of good things, but I go back to the things like, oh man, you got to watch out for. Because again, you know, if you think about like the enemy, right? The enemy is the author of confusion. God's not the author of confusion, right? So God wants things to be, even though he doesn't explain everything in ways that we get, but it's not like he's trying to confuse us. For the most part, we can understand pretty much all that we need to know to glorify God, right?
For sure.
Right.
But
right.
once you start getting into, this was a conversation you and I had, Strike, yesterday about just the mental health thing, right? Once you start like listening to stuff, you can't trust it, right? You don't trust it. Then you become like, remember when we did this episode on this, when Donald Trump started saying fake news, those two words changed. It tore down an industry, essentially. Like those two words, fake news, you're fake news, that tore down a pretty much decent, credible, respectable industry of journalism, right? And
put the nail in the coffin for sure.
It did, and that became the way people started to see things was like fake news. So then fake news wasn't, oh, this is a wrong story, you're lying. Fake news became, I don't like what you're saying, so it's fake news, right?
Right.
So that's where we got to this point where there's so much vitriol, there's so much, everything is like, I don't like it, and immediate action is fake. Or if it's cancel culture, I don't like it, you should be restricted in what you're allowed to do. You should lose your job, right? I think that we're going to get to a point where so many things are not genuine that we're just not sure how to trust anything. So then when something does appear as genuine, we're going to be like, oh man, Eureka. This is like fantastic. And it may be somebody who's claiming to be the return of Christ or something like that, right? It's just like we're getting set up to be, and again, the technology could be amazing. But like if I hadn't heard, if that dude hadn't said this isn't Jay-Z, I wouldn't have put that together. I mean, I've been a Jay-Z fan since '96, right? I wouldn't have put that, or before that, when he was Hawaiian Sophie with Big Jet.
Before he was cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put that together. So again, it's like we'll get to a point where we can't trust anything. So imagine Strat Flora calls you and you don't know if it's really her because you got crank called. Somebody called you and told you to do something crazy and you knew it wasn't her because she was sitting right beside you. Now you're getting calls and you can't tell if it's your wife or not. You know what I mean? Like you can't tell if it's really your mom. Please help me. I'm having a heart attack, and you rush over there and they're all over there eating spaghetti.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
like
not to mention the quality. Like you got to consider the quality aspect. I mean, AI is gonna do everything top notch.
100%,
so like
that's my point.
when you look at artwork, for example, I was diving into what AI is able to do artistically. I mean, they're able to make paintings that are entire universes. Like you look into the outer part of the painting and it starts to move. And it's painting within painting within painting within painting. And it's just worlds that are in there. How can the human mind compete with that level of creativity at such a rapid pace? I mean,
yeah, bro. We've come a long way from the self-checkout line, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the self-checkout line?
Yep, that was a novelty at first.
Novelty. It was at first until people was like, man, I can't get no job. I can't even get a job bagging groceries.
Now the novelty is finding a register with a human being that's actually open.
Isn't that crazy?
Right,
bro?
right.
Isn't that interesting how it flips back? So with this, you get to a point where like, man, who's going to be needed in the thought work? Who's going to be, if I can, as a doctor, like what if I say, write me a step-by-step how to do a procedure on a person and then it just kind of writes it. It's just like, it could be crazy, bro. The stuff that people are going to be willing to try, like, I mean, oh man, I can go in good and bad things. Like, oh.
There's something you said earlier that, where you're talking about the advent of the smartphone and how it kind of has made us dumber and different things like that, right? And because, now you don't have to do like the mental exercises to get to the end goal, right?
Uh-uh.
Connect to that. Now because you haven't had that grind to get to the end goal,
Yeah.
the maturity to handle the end goal is actually also not there, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
that's like, let's say you're a business owner and you've had to grind your way out, and now you're a millionaire, but you've matured over that time because of the work you've
Right.
had to put in.
Right.
But now you take that same person, let's say they win the lottery instead and they have $1 million overnight. That maturity hasn't developed over time, and so now they could go out and start spending money, and they're kind of wild with it,
Folks
right?
be broke in a couple
Same
weeks,
thing with
right?
this, right? Now, because of the event of AI, you can just type in and create anything that you want, and you haven't developed the maturity over time of working in that industry of the things that you're creating in, versus just jumping in and just now my imagination can just run wild. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think being in stuff, you develop the consequences. You understand consequences to things that you do. You learn that so that you learn what not to do again next time.
Exactly.
And
right.
if you don't have that, that's what you're talking about.
Right. But now you don't have to learn. You don't have to learn that. You can just quickly jump to the end goal. And so it kind of goes with that, like, kind of that the old Jurassic Park saying. What do you say? People tried so hard to figure out whether or not they could, they never stopped and think whether or not they should.
Right.
It's like your baby just learned how to walk and you're so excited you tell it to go ahead and cross the street.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead and cross the street. I just want to see you walk.
Right. Exactly.
Really?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an interesting time that we're in, and I think you said it earlier, Kron Keezy, that like this is kind of new and exciting and stuff, and it's happening, but like it's gonna escalate. It can escalate so quickly, and I think Elon Musk is right. It's gonna be when something drastic happens where we realize, man, this was a bad move. Or you're gonna pass laws like to try to regulate it, and the laws will be reckless. Right? Because so now all of a sudden, like you got, I mean, this new React, what's it called? Is that the React Act? The left is trying to propose of like it's a TikTok ban, right? But it's really not a TikTok ban though. Like the left is trying to get their left hand in all your stuff, right? It's deeper than that. So it's like, man, you're gonna pass legislation that is reckless because you're afraid of the recklessness of people as they do it, right? Like that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna pass that stuff. So I just think it's gonna be wild. And if you're able to
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask a question. What then happens to the gospel and the presentation of the gospel if people are just so used to never believing anything that they hear or see?
Well, I mean, think about it like this, though, right? Like the enemy's desire is to create a society where people don't need God, right? They don't desire God. And the reason why the reason why Jesus said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than the rich to be saved is because when you have money, when you have finances, a lot of the things that you need from God, you have with money. A lot of the things that you need from God, if you're rich and you have money, then you don't need God, right?
For sure.
That's why the gospel really appeals to poor people, and that's why people do missions trips in third world countries instead of Beverly Hills, right? Instead of Malibu, where people need the gospel probably just as much or more than those folks, right? So when you get to a point where, like AI is to me is the equivalent of being artificially rich, right? Like in the sense where I can now ask this program to do things and think about things and help me invent things without me doing anything. It almost replaces God and it reacts quickly. So it's like, you have a desire, you've been praying about it. You say, hey, AI, write up, how do I get this? And you fill in the blank. It's like, I think it's going to be a further tool to show that you don't need God when you can just ask this thing and it actually responds quickly.
And it's omnipresent.
Practical. Yeah. And
to a certain degree.
At least omniscient, you know what I'm saying, in terms of it's all wise, right?
All knowing,
It's just like, oh, okay, it has, I think that's going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like I don't know what AI said, but what if these programs are anti-God and a child says, "Hey AI, why should I believe in Jesus?" And it's, you don't need to believe in Jesus. He's not really real. He's a figment of the imagination of a small band of people that were called Christian. You just have no, I think it has the potential to make people because we still live in the get rich quick scheme sort of ideology, even though we don't use that terminology anymore.
Sure.
We still want what we want quickly. Matter of fact, most of the things that we're offended at from God are because most people aren't offended at God because they're not growing in Him as much as they want to. They're offended at God because they're not getting things that they thought they deserved or thought He would do. Right? Yeah. So when you have a program that has the ability in some way, shape, or form to give you information, knowledge, maybe answer a prayer in some kind of way that you didn't know, all of a sudden now you have salvation by chat, by AI.
Mm-hmm.
And you will have people that will worship that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you will have people that will worship AI and build a spiritual community around what AI can do and accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like everything else will become like our idols, so you'll have a bunch of people with a whole lot of knowledge with no heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. No compassion for society, no compassion for humanity. Yeah. No desire for God.
It's synthetic. We become synthetic human beings.
Exactly.
We become just kind of like Blade Runner, and then back in the day, like who's really a human being or not? Like now we don't even know whether we can. I mean, we do, but it's questioning like, well, you can't say this person's not a woman or that. So it becomes like a synthetic person. It's like not real. Like it's not really what. And then when you start adding this stuff, it's like not real. And then all of a sudden, when I get a phone call, I'm like, man, I don't know if this is really Strike or not, man, because it's like, it could be I mean, we're not there yet, but it could be to that point. It's going to get there. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about this app. If you go to the App Store right now, there's a ton of AI apps on it. Yeah. I happen to find the one that's rated number 1 in the App Store, but it didn't connect to, at least right now, it didn't connect to the Chat GPT account that I made. So I thought, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of good uses for this thing. Yeah. Like, you can do, especially if you're creative, this AI can be, especially if you do writing. Like, I mean, there's other things you can do, I'm sure, but like if you're a writer, you just say, you give an idea out, you get some thoughts. Because sometimes with being a creative, the hardest thing to do is to get started, right? But once you get something to help you get your mind get started, you can just go.
And even in other arts too, like other side from just writing, like creating like images, like who needs Photoshop anymore, or who needs to be a graphic designer? Really, all you need is to have an imagination for what you're trying to create, and you can just ask the computer to create it for you. I mean, you can literally ask it to create any image that you want, with all the enhancements and whatever you want it to look like. You can just tell it exactly, and it'll spit it out for you.
So going along that same vein, being that you're so involved, what is around the corner that we may not be expecting? Like what can you share that's around the corner as far as technological advancements pertaining to AI that we're not ready for, that we're not expecting?
I can tell you a further addiction to pornography is around the corner, because if you can do what you just said and take images and have it manipulate them and do that, and then eventually
look up Midjourney. Look up Midjourney when you have a chance.
Yeah,
Midjourney.
It's a AI image creation tool. You can literally tell it to create any image you want, and it'll create it. You can even tell it to create an image in the style of a specific artist if you want. So hey, I want a picture of the Terminator, doing X, Y, and Z, create it in the style of Andy Warhol. It'll create it for you, or I want a realistic picture of Barack Obama eating a cheeseburger at a Wendy's in downtown DC, and boom, it'll spit it out to you. So you can either make it look like a cartoon, or you can make it look real, or somewhere in between. You could tell it how real you want it to look. It's crazy. It'll create any image you want.
So AI is literally replacing all of what humanity has to offer. Like as far as creativity, as far as culture, as far as it's in a way trying to outdo humanity already. It's outdoing everything that we do, doing it better. Would you say that?
Right now in some circles, in the future probably in many more circles, yeah. But like right now, especially when in terms of like, especially in terms of like image creation and
Content too, right? It's getting
content creation and stuff like that. You know, when it comes in terms of like asking questions, there are still ways that it gets answers wrong. So you definitely have to check if you ask it a question, you know, check to make sure the answer is right.
Right.
Because it can give you wrong answers for sure. And it does it all the time. But when it comes to actually creating stuff, then I think that's definitely where it has kind of humanity. You know, that's when it kind of has humanity's number in that regard.
I have another interesting question I have is how far is the gap between like when things are exposed to regular society, like to all of humanity, to when they're actually discovered? So what I mean is like when Siri came out or Alexa, like that advancement of technology where you can speak and it speaks back to you. It's AI, right?
Mhm.
How long was that in the lab, like where they figured that out, and that's been going on before they actually released it to the public? Like how long does that usually take place?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the event of like Siri and Alexa and those type of things, they actually weren't baked that long in the lab before they hit the general public. Those actually happened pretty rapidly. I mean, even Chat GPT and this stuff happened fairly rapidly within a few years. I mean, Chat GPT has been around for some years. It didn't just happen like this year. It just became good enough, and people started caring enough about it for it to kind of make the news. And now it's kind of like a big deal, and so more companies are investing money in it and all that kind of stuff. So now it's progressing rapidly, but it has been around for some time. I think maybe 8 years or something like that. Somewhere between 5 and 8 years has been around. So.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. So
So
what would you say there's a so is that the new thing that it's happening faster, like the turnaround with how quickly things are released to everyone?
Oh, I
Or
would
is it
say so. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%. One
okay.
one thing I wanted to go back to really quickly, some of the good uses. And you said what's around the corner. I think
Right.
there's definitely some things around the corner from a medical perspective that will definitely benefit from AI. Like, you know, I know of projects now and organizations that are actually using tools that, you know, they fed it images of like lung cancer and images of lungs and different things like that, to an AI program that was created, and now that same program can, you know, you can feed it any kind of like CT scan or CAT scan or any image of like lungs and different things like that. It can tell you pretty accurately whether or not this person has cancer, even if the radiologist can't detect it with his own human eye. It can
Wow.
look at the deformations of the image itself, even if they don't see a spot on there, and can tell you that this person is prone to have cancer, or this person probably does have cancer, even if the radiologist can't see it.
From the
Uh,
image alone.
just from the
Wow.
image. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. I know intimately of projects like that. I'll just say that.
How about nanobots?
I'm not as familiar in that domain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. When I consider the medical field and all of the advancements like that we have had already, I mean, when you throw AI in the mix, it's gonna be bananas. You know.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff around the corner from a medical perspective that, you know, I can't talk too much, but like it's crazy in a good way, you know,
Right.
in a
Especially
good way.
because the desire is there because everyone wants to live longer, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
human natural desire. So, and when desire is involved with creativity, there's no stopping that train. I mean, it's pushing. So if everyone's desiring to live longer, the medical field is where the technology and the advancements are going to come
Yep.
quicker.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Wow, bro.
Yep.
So what blew you away about, like, because you kind of saw things coming? Was there anything that blew you away when you saw like the AI stuff hit?
Me?
Like, yeah, was there anything you personally were like, "Dang."
I mean, just because of my background and kind of the things that I work in, you know, I think the medical stuff that I'm having in my mind right now that I can't say too much about, that
Yeah,
stuff is blowing me away like currently. Because I think between now and 10 years from now, there are going to be some diseases that were commonplace up until this point that AI will definitely help us solve for sure. Like I'm 100% confident. There's a couple diseases in my mind right now that I know significant work from an AI perspective is being done, and we're making significant progress. So I think in 10 years time, some of those diseases, the fatality outlook for a lot of these diseases will be like a night and day difference between what we have today, just within 10 years.
I wonder where that's gonna how that's gonna come into play when you talk about people in power and technocrats.
Right.
How's that gonna come into play as far as who it's accessible to? Because you deal with population control. The concept of population control,
right,
Elysium up in this joint,
Right.
Yeah, it's like who's gonna regulate? That stuff is wild, man. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a hard conversation. That's a hard conversation.
This guy.
That is Barbara Walters tonight, though. That's what it is.
I've been thinking about this stuff, man. This stuff is intriguing.
It is. It's been blowing me away too.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult to predict, just because, unfortunately, sometimes you have to judge things by their track record, right? And so, things like that, we have to figure out how's the government going to carry it. When we have these advancements and stuff like that, how are we going to make sure that it's accessible to all people versus a certain select people group and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, what blows me though is that our government right now is basically in a civil war with the other opposition. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to think about what's best for the constituents. It's going to be, how do we use this to get one up our opponents?
Political advancements.
Sure.
Yeah. It's just that, and that's just, unfortunately, that's the real issue. Is they're going to figure out, one, how do we make money, because everything's going to be about money, right?
Sure, of course.
So, but then it's how do we use this to show that we're better than? I mean, can you imagine? I don't know. I don't. So this is the thing I don't know, and you might know this. Is there a way to authenticate things and be like, nah, this was AI generated? Apart from we have him on camera being somewhere else at the exact time. To me, the Trump thing, I knew it was fake, but it was just funny as a mug, right?
Right.
And they had one for Biden. I knew it was fake, but it was funny as a mug, right? And of course, there's some people that won't look at this dude. He got but for the most part. But is there a way to even authenticate this? If someone can take my voice and have a phone conversation with another woman and then try to put the word out that I'm committing adultery, is there a way that we can is there some type of technology that can listen to that and tell this is fabricated?
Or a paper trail, some kind of paper trail, digital trail.
But they have that kind of stuff. They have technologies that can tell this is not,
Adobe is actually working on that now. Adobe is working on a way to do you guys are familiar with the term watermark or whatever? Yeah. So Adobe's working on a way now and trying to propose people to use a system that they've developed to kind of digitally watermark anything that AI has generated. That way we can know that if this is legitimate by a human being or not.
Wow.
But people have to adopt that though. Just because Adobe's working on the technology and actually has versions of it that people can use now, people have to agree to adopt it. Right. That goes back to the whole legislation thing and all that. There's also people working on AI that can detect whether AI has developed something. So there are people working on. So how you go to a ChatGPT website and ask it to do something for you, right? There are people who are working on websites that are similar to that, but instead of asking it to do something for you, you can feed it something that has been created and say, was this created by an AI? And it'll try to break it down and see if it was created by an AI.
See, to me, that
kind of sounds like the police investigating the police. That's what that's saying.
AI internal affairs, right?
Yeah,
See, AI is affairs internal.
Right, for sure.
Hey, just so y'all know, for any believers out there, just remember that AI is biblical. AI is in the Bible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. They got rocked after they beat him up for a little bit. But
what I think is interesting what you said was, and I wish I had a little bit more bread that I could do this, the investments right now where I would put my money in if I could invest is in companies that are that are doing that, because whoever can regulate and prove if something is AI or not is going to be very valuable. If there's a way, matter of fact, we want to talk offline, my G, because you know.
Yeah, there's some companies right now. Yep.
But bro, that's the move right there. Like that's where you invest. Like who's developing technology to understand what AI is doing?
Yeah.
That's where you put your money. Because
and how long before AI corrupts that process? Because they don't want it.
See,
you know what I'm saying? Like
you're saying the rapid decline of yourself mentally about believing things now,
right?
And it, we just had a conversation, and now you're already prone to not believe things, right? Like so extrapolate that for a whole society of people, man.
Right.
10 years from now, it could be a dangerous place in the world.
Listen, brother, that's why I tell the Lord, please keep my mind and my heart. You know what I mean? Because
Amen.
We live in a world where you can go insane real quick, brother. Real quick.
People
already make us feel that way. Now AI gonna make us feel that way.
And that's one of my next videos. I'm talking about that, like the other side of mental health. But I do think the company that can develop technology to help know whether this is AI or generated or not is going to be huge.
There are free projects out there like that right now. So yeah,
they're going to be huge because you might need that for self-defense for something, or it's going to have to be a way to authenticate, is this genuine or not? Like, I mean, I know if I were like in school or something, I don't know if I wouldn't feel comfortable turning in like a straight up and down book report that was all AI. Because you know what I would do if I was a teacher? I would go ahead and talk. I'd get an AI.
And see if you come up with the same joint.
And see if you can come up with the same joint.
Yeah.
You say the same thing. Here's the book. Here's the premise, and see if you can come up with it and be like, "This is almost identical to what this wrote." Like, I don't believe that you read this.
We've all seen.
It's more work though, but
yeah, it would be more work. We've all seen iRobot.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, in your opinion, technologically, are we already capable of being there, or is that far off?
The mechanical side of it, we're a lot further behind.
Okay.
But it's definitely getting better. It's definitely getting better over time. That one's the one that has kind of escaped us a little bit as a society. And mechanical, we're getting better and better at it, but that one's a lot more difficult. The physical aspect of producing, something that seems human, seem realistically human,
That seems like, I mean, I would say that's probably the easier part.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're developing if you're grooming AI or building AI, as far as its advancement of knowledge and understanding of things, I would imagine that would take longer than learning how to build the slick robot that's agile.
It's surprising. It's the opposite.
Really?
Learning how to build compelling robotics that can pass as human. That is proved to be way more difficult. I think
passing as human. Yeah. I was still on the AI. I mean, on the iRobot type. They didn't really look human.
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying. Like even
they had the robot vibe to them, but human. Yeah, I could see that.
Even that though, like producing a robot that can like walk on two legs and like that's in like humanesque form. That's still we're still a ways off from that. Yeah. And we can produce robots that can do certain things, like specific tasks. Like we can create a robot that can, lift crates in a warehouse and all that kind of stuff. But someone who can just a robot that can just walk on the street, whether or not it looks human or not, but just kind of like just walk on the street every day and all that kind of stuff.
Without being programmed.
That has been more difficult for sure. Right. I'm gonna send you a couple videos of some recent developments in that area that are impressive. That'll both show you how impressive it is, but also how far we still have to go in that regard.
Okay.
But Strike, you and I both have seen also brothels with fake out.
Oh yeah.
Like, not even blow up dolls, like synthetic dolls.
Yeah, synthetic dolls.
There were a couple that looked legitimate. Like I was like, wow, this doll, these man was going into brothels in the UK and in the US. Like, it's like that's a different kind of AI. That's like, oh, this is like this. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right now, so I all right. So my last thing, how would you, both of you guys, think through this? What do you think? We don't want to make believers like, oh man, you can't use AI. Just don't do this. but like, how would you encourage like believers to think through just sort of artificial intelligence and what to pay attention to or just to be mindful of? How would you guys counsel people to think through this?
I mean, I can go real quick. I would say, first of all, that there's nothing new under the sun. You know,
Sure.
So figure out what is compatible to this in Scripture. You know, what can I, how can I govern my mind in light of the Lord and what He's commanded with what I see today as far as technological advancements. You know, where do we have technological advancements in Scripture where they were used maybe in wicked ways or maybe in good ways? And how did the people react and respond to them? But most importantly, where are the people in light of the Lord? Are they desiring knowledge and understanding mostly from Him, or have you become so dependent upon the knowledge of this world that you don't even realize that that's what you're doing, that you're banking on, you know, AI? Can I have a good day today, AI? You know, AI, I would like for your name to be made known holy throughout the world, AI. AI, can you keep me from temptation today? You know, can you keep my phone away from da 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 da? Like, it's not too long before we start to subconsciously treat God or treat AI as God, and you know, flip the script on it. So I would say just be very careful with how dependent you are upon anything from this world, including AI. You know, so it's gonna make our lives easier. It's gonna make our lives harder in some ways. One of the people on here mentioned, you know, it'll take away a lot of pain from us as well. When you talk about medical advancements, it'll take away a lot of pain. But we already struggle to have a theology of suffering. So make sure you're reading Scripture. Make sure you're dependent upon God, even if you feel like you have everything you need around you. Know that we are going to face a judge over all the earth at one point, and we must be right before Him. And there's only one way to do that, and that's through Christ, not AI. So,
Amen. You know, I would also say that, like, you know, some of this stuff might sound scary. You don't know what's going to happen in the world, but, you know, I know it's not going to be like the most profound answer in the world, but even with all these different advancements and the possibility for new ways of doing evil and different things like that, you know, at the end of the day, the Lord is still the Lord, right?
amen.
At the end of the day, He's still God of the universe, right? And so I think that, you know, I think from that perspective, you know, you still just press in and trust the Lord, to be honest, trust in His sovereignty. And if you can't validate anything else as truth, then know the one thing that you know for sure is true.
Facts.
And that's
Amen.
the Lord, and that's your word, right?
Amen.
I mean, that's the single source of truth that we can trust no matter what. So if all else fails, we still got that.
Amen.
You know?
Praise God for that.
Yeah.
His word shall remain forever.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I would just say, I think through Paul in Corinthians when he said, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial.
Sure.
Right? So I think we live in a society where if it's available, then I should try it. I need to have it or whatever, you know. And I think just some things are permissible. It's not sin to do, but it could be for the way I would use it or what I would do with it. So I think even with AI, you know, there's still a, like you all said it, there's still a, how do we honor the Lord in using it? I don't think we should be afraid of it at all.
Yeah.
You know, internet, everything will be used for evil by people who are evil. So
Facts.
everything,
even
so
the word.
Yeah, so I'm not tripping off of what AI could do. I just think it's going to, you know, I think we have to be. It's funny that you guys are saying this about being in the word because it sounds like a cliche.
It's not, though.
But I think in reality, like in a world where so many things are artificial, we have to hold on to something that's true.
That's right.
Like I have to be grounded by some objective truth because AI will become a new objective truth for some people.
Yeah.
But
Or the determiner of objective truth.
Right. So, but embedded in the name AI is artificial, right? So it's not real. So, but people will take it that way. So I think, you know, it's not a cliche to be like, we got to be in the word. I think we have to make sure that as believers, we just have a grasp of something that's objectively true. And by that, I just mean, I think scripture and the promises of God. not our desires, what we hope God will do, but the actual promises. Those
Mm-hmm.
things are, we need to be grounded in some kind of objective truth, because we're living in a world where the possibilities of confusion are endless, right?
Yeah.
Endless.
Yeah.
The availability for, I mean, I think somebody, I don't know if said this in the chat or whatever, but, well, Brady, I think Brady said this in the chat earlier, that like having a phone with so much access to so many things
Yeah.
in like, it's just like I can like, we're kind of quasi omnipresent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through a phone I can see a bunch of, it really hit me when Ferguson happened, and someone was told, gave me a link to a live stream that was showing what was happening in Ferguson. Like,
Right.
it was a live stream, it was 24 hours, and I was like, wow, I'm at my home, but I'm also right here in Ferguson. I'm watching stuff as it's happening if I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a degree in which our phones have the accessibility through technology has been good in a lot of it, but the bad part of it is we all have digital nervous systems, and we're having digital nervous system breakdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
how many times have you seen people be like, "Hey guys, I'm taking a break from social media. I
Mm-hmm.
just need to step down. I'm taking a month off. See you guys in a month."
Right.
And I used to see it happen on Twitter all the time. Hey, I'm stepping away.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we don't realize the impact of what's happening, because so many things are accessible that we're overloading. You know, we're overloaded with information. We're overloaded with how many people have done this. So, you know, or we can find a community for the things that we struggle with.
That's
Our
a fact.
proclivities. There's a community for your proclivities out there at the click of a button. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we just have to hold on to something that's true,
Yeah.
and remember, like, this is the objective truth for me. And as the world becomes more accessible to confusion becomes more accessible, we have to just be aware of it. Like, hey, I can use this as cool, but I also have to be careful,
Yeah.
because I can mess around, just lose myself in, you know, in all of this.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So,
Mm-hmm.
hey man, good talk. I appreciated this, man. This was a lot of good food for thought. Crying Keezy, glad to have you on the show.
Yes,
For
sir.
the first time, man. You know,
It's
you
great to meet you, man.
about to be
You
the
too, brother.
technological expert. So whenever we
Hey,
get
hey.
ready, you come on. Oh, okay. One last question. I
Hit
asked
me.
you this earlier. What are cookies, bro? And the reason why I'm asking it is because
You can't eat them.
because you know how well that's true, but I'm going against the grain here.
Chocolate
here and
chip, you know?
If I die, I'm
Chocolate
gonna
chip.
die. My taste buds happy. Listen,
Word
what,
up.
what
Chocolate
is
chip.
because, like, you know, there was this thing about, oh, don't let these websites sell your data, right?
Sure.
Then all of a sudden these cookies comes up, and you got to either approve of it or not. And I think you just click accept or whatever, because you just think, well, without it, maybe the website won't run. What exactly are cookies, and what do they do? Are they, should you always accept them, or should you be like, nah, I don't accept this joint?
It depends. So as there's many different ways that cookies are used for, right? So essentially what a cookie is like, you go to a website, it says, you know, this website uses cookies, blah, blah, blah. You click on OK. What will happen is your browser, the website will give your browser a file that the website can store data about you and what you've done on that website in that file. That's essentially what a cookie is,
Okay.
right? It, yeah, that's the simplest way I can kind of explain that. So essentially, like, let's say you go to gmail.com and you log in, right? And then you close your you close your browser completely down, or you reboot your computer and you go back to gmail.com, but you don't have to log in again. That's because it stored that login cookie in your browser, so it knows that you recently just logged in. It's not going to make you log in again, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a convenient way to use cookies. But cookies can also be used in what's called like cross-site tracking. So let's say Facebook is kind of running, a program where, you know, if Walmart, you know, has ads on Facebook and someone clicks on that ad and goes to the Walmart site, and then and they get a sale from that, then let's say they have to pay like Facebook, you know, that they do profit sharing and stuff like that, right? So what cross site tracking cookies are is a website's ability to put something on your computer to where now it knows what other websites you've gone to, and if you've gone to other websites that they happen to have contracts or business with those other websites, now they can get money from, let's say, to basically they can say, okay, we sent this person here, or because they were on our site, that's how they ended up on your site to buy your thing. So give me a cut of whatever they purchased. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little hustle. It can be.
Yeah, it can be for sure.
Right.
That's
It's
why
like tags. It's like tags.
That's why tracking, especially cross-site tracking cookies, are kind of like a big deal for like e-commerce and stuff like that.
So are people really mad at Apple because Apple stopped the tracking of websites? Like, are companies really angry at that? Like Facebook and other. I mean, there was a big dispute.
Most companies that are mad about that are ad tech companies because essentially, if they show you an ad, so let's say you go on a website and you see an ad, right, and you click on that ad, right, how does the ad company who's serving up that ad know that you bought this, whatever, you bought these new tennis shoes because you saw that ad, unless they can track you to know that, okay, 15 minutes after you went to this website where our ad was displayed, now you go to the Nike.com and you buy this shoe that that we showed you in the ad, right? They have to be able to prove that to get paid. That's why they're upset. Okay. Because now that they can't prove, it makes it harder to kind of prove kind of where you've gone in relation to where you've been on the internet. So they can't prove that their ads are
in a capitalistic sort of free market society. Why would Apple do that? Like, what's Apple's? How is it really about protecting the privacy of its owners, or is it just a flex move? Like, what's the benefit for Apple to do that?
The benefit for them, not necessarily a direct benefit, other than like customers who are on the whole privacy game and people who really like that stuff. Kind of bolstering sales from that perspective. I mean. The other thing that it does is, Apple's always has always been for the most part at odds with like companies like Facebook, who basically use the data and kind of harvest your data. And from Apple's perspective, at least, my opinion from Apple's perspective, how you can have like good motives and bad motives for the same thing, right? Yeah. You can have mixed motives, right? So I think, from a good motive perspective, I think they really do care about privacy of their users. I think from a bad motive perspective, they knew that shutting this down would hurt Facebook and some other companies who they don't see eye to eye on, and they knew it would hurt their business. And I think there was definitely some good motive mixed in with bad motive for sure.
It was a flex move, and they was trying to show you
for sure. I think so. I think that was a part of it. Yeah, absolutely. And that also, I think Apple has this thing where they kind of feel entitled to being paid for anything that happens on their platform.
They do though, right?
Yeah, right. So imagine now you have a Facebook has all the affiliate programs with all these other ad companies and different things like that, and serving up ads on websites that you go on your iPhone. Apple's not getting a cut of any of that money, right? Mm-hmm. And so because they feel entitled by it, they're like, hold up, we can't just let people get money on our platform from our customers without us getting a cut. So I think that was also a part of the mixed motive as well.
Right. Man.
Green, baby. It's always the color green. Always comes back to green.
Trouble in the world. All of it. That green is getting ready to be digital. That green is getting ready to be
Don't fall for it. Don't do crypto. Don't fall for it.
Nah, I'm not. But the government is trying to right now working on a currency though, like that. Not no crypto, no Bitcoin, none of that, but like a real currency that it would track and regulate. But they're trying to do that right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got to. They got to figure out another way to be able to print money.
Well, yeah, but also because China, Russia, Iran, India, Syria. Some of these major companies are
switching from the dollar.
Yeah, they're changing from the dollar, and China's at the top of it. Just like, we're going to create a currency that rivals the dollar and pull out so that the dollar doesn't become the world stable, financial, ideology and function out. It's just like, no, let's get rid of it. So that's
another conversation we can have, because I think the U.S. I think our our position as a world power, I think we're about to go the way of Rome, man. I think at some
I think
point,
so, bro.
I think,
I think we're going to go the way of Rome, bro.
yeah,
It's interesting that you said that.
Yeah, great powers, 300 years tops, man, and they topple. So
yeah.
we,
I think
we
we're headed that
overdue.
way. I think it's gonna first be started to facilitate through currency, right?
100%.
Once nothing's tied to our dollar anymore, then we instantly kind of lose some of that power that we have.
Yeah.
And then I think
Well, that is our power, though, right?
That's true.
We have some techno. So our power is really threefold. It's technological, right? And then it's militaristic, and then it's commerce. It's
Our land too. Our land too. Our land is part of our power, and they consuming a lot of that as well. China's already purchasing up their landowners in America is bananas in the U.S.
China. So I dabble in real estate on the side, bro. China buys up so much land in the U.S. It's
on
not
the
even
regular,
funny.
on the
blocks, like blocks and blocks of especially urban cities where it goes penny on a dollar. Yeah. So you best believe where there's places that have been riots, China will come in those destroyed neighborhoods and will buy up whole city blocks, bro. Right.
You know what's interesting about that is they've done it before. That's a tactic that they've used with other countries. It's similar to back in the day with. It's similar to back in the day with the vassal kings.
Bruh.
You got kings under kings. China's just purchasing land until we become one of their vassals, man.
100%.
Real rat.
Yep.
They got Jamaica on lock. They just. I mean, my friend was doing business in Jamaica and was just walking me through. They got Jamaica on lock now.
They got our celebrities on lock. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody saying nothing about China.
So again, it's their long game, folks. But that's where you hit America. That's why Obama and Osama and them hit
the world trade.
Yeah, because it represents the commerce of America, the strength of America as well. It's
sure.
Money. We are hey, I'm fine with capitalism, but there's a degree in which, the sin of America is not racism. It's consumerism. It's
It was the World Trade Center that they attacked. Right. You know what I'm saying?
And so I think it's coming, bro. And I think again, once you said, like you said, they just said on the other day that 1.3 was it 1.3 billion, or maybe it was maybe it was more than 1.3. But I remember 1.3. $1.3 billion was pulled out of Bank of America, which is one of the main banks in America. There's like 5 major banks, like J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citibank, and I forgot the other 2. People pulled out $1.3 billion in a couple of hours because they were worried about stuff. And I don't think people don't realize that the way I know we're drifting into a different conversation and we're not going to go too far, but people don't realize that the way our economy works is that the banks basically loan other banks money. They take our money and loan it. If you ever, this is what you do: get up at like 3 a.m. and go on your mobile app and try to access your account. You won't be able to. You won't be able to because the banks are transferring your money and stuff like that. That's why you can only take out a certain amount of a day. You can only take out this much out of the ATM. The banks need to have money in them, so that's how money moves around the economy. So if people start taking all their money out of the banks, then the banks don't have that leverage. They don't have the ability to barter with other banks and other stuff like that.
Our economy has crashed for that reason in the past.
Yeah, it has.
Yep.
And so that SBV bank that happened out in California, that bank was small, but it was indicative of a larger problem.
Right.
A much larger concern. And now we know that some of in America, we did it to ourselves. We hit Russia with those economic sanctions for the Ukraine war. And then people were like, oh, they can do that and crush your. So it was like, hey, we pulling our confidence out of the dollar. Like this is a lot that we just don't even know, man, because we're so entertained by who's gay and what this celebrity is wearing and all of that. We don't really pay attention to like the grand scheme of what's happening in our world. And so it's crazy times right now, bro.
Yeah, man. Yep.
Like that dollar's and then people don't realize if our dollar's in jeopardy, we're not the world power, then
things gonna be changing.
It's gonna change.
For sure. Everything's changing.
And
we're
still living like just like any other country you go to, they got money that they still live and buy stuff. It's not like, oh, we're gonna collapse in the sense to that, but there'll just be a different our money won't be the money. Like you won't travel as much because now the dollar won't be worth. We won't be. You go to some countries, a dollar is 10 times worth what their money is. Shoot, what happens when you can't travel because you're gonna lose money going to this country now?
Right, it's gonna implode.
It's just gonna be crazy, bro. So get your traveling now.
Yes.
Go ahead and travel now. Do it now, because in a couple of years, that money might be not worth it.
But just don't go to Mexico, you know what I mean? Because it's crazy out there right now. Stay away from them dudes.
Right now, bro. They killing Bamas in resorts out there. You over there getting sitting on a pina colada.
Oh yeah.
And listening to a book on Audible, and you hear you turn around and Bama's getting killed. Like that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I just think that. But anyway, Kronkeezy, man, appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Privilege to have you on, man. We definitely gonna get you back on, especially when we talk. I want to get you back on. I want to do an episode on hacking, my dude.
Okay.
I want to do an episode on hacking because that is the new. It's not new, but that is. I'm sure you know this.
We have talked about it in the past.
Division of their government that's all devoted to hacking and stuff.
For sure. Yeah, of course.
They have like a couple 100 million people because they got. It's crazy, bro. Hacking is no.
We can definitely have that. That'll be a fun conversation
to talk about hacking and some of those dynamics. Because it's impressive to me on one level.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You just see people; they're just able to just boom, 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 and they broke through this infrastructure. We broke through it. It's like wow, and then we saw that happen. All these people's information getting lost and hackers, and it was like, golly, like how do you even learn how to do that? Like that's crazy, bro. So we're gonna have you. I want to get into that. I want some of that smoke.
Let's do it, man. I dabbled a little bit when I was younger, so we can talk.
I know what's up with you scanners. I know what's up with you. But man, we appreciate you, bro. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate this conversation. Thanks for your input and your thoughts, man. And hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Y'all know how we get down, man. Like and subscribe to the channel. You know that. You know what's good. Leave a comment in the actual video for the algorithm. What, man? What you mean, man? We trying to do it with the algorithm. We trying to grow the channel and all that stuff. Consider supporting us on patreon.com/links will be in the description. Man, you spend $5 a day on Starbucks. Give us $5 a month and let us make that $1. You know what I'm saying? That's how we do it. So we appreciate y'all, man. Thanks for, you know what I'm saying? I'm Kirk Kennedy. He's Strack the Wolverine. We got the guest, Mike Kronkeezy.
Yeah.
Grace and peace, y'all. We'll see y'all on the next one.
Peace.